Hello, and welcome to the first in this free series of seminars on the impact of neuroscience on the future of HR management, sponsored by iXerv and Neuro-link. So, who have we got with us today? My name is Rob Payton. I am the head of marketing at iXerv. I'm joined by Dr. Andre Vermeulen, who is a founding member of Neuro-link, which I'll talk about in a second. Rhonda Stockton, who's a senior solution architect also at iXerv. Can Vermeulen, yes, they are related. He's director of operations at Neuro-link. And Neldy Prinsloo, who's a colleague of mine, who's my partner in crime. She will be helping me with registrations and fielding any questions that people have. So I'm joined by quite an array of smart people scattered all over South Africa. I'm based in London. I want to know we have guests today from the Middle East, from Europe, and even in the USA. So I hope you're still awake, or you got up early, or whichever it is. So hello to my fellow guests.
Hi there, Rob.
Good day, Rob, and hi everyone else.
Okay, great.
Hi everyone.
Hello. So this session is due to last about an hour. We're going to have a couple of presentations, and then we'll have about 20 minutes time for discussion. So if you want to ask a question at any time, do so using the side panel there. And as I said, my colleague Neldy will gather them until the end of the formal presentations, and then we'll discuss them there. She'll try and kind of get the gist. So just very quickly before we start, a quick background on the two companies who are sponsoring these sessions. iXerv is a recognized leader in the world of SAP SuccessFactors implementations, and we consistently achieve scores in the high percentiles for customer satisfaction. So we've recently launched a package solution called Punch, which is that brand there, which supplies the software as well as the implementation and support services all under one contract through a software as a service rental agreement. So if you are looking for a SuccessFactors partner, then you need look no further than us. Neuro-link was founded over 2 decades ago, and its aim is to convert neuroscience and the theories behind it into business-focused results. So they train organizations, HR professionals on how to use their emotional intelligence assessments to improve staff productivity and effectiveness. So they are pretty qualified to be teaching us the foundations of this interesting field, which is what we're doing today. So today is session 1, 6th of October. How can neuroscience help you drive business results? So it's a kind of general session today. It's a bit of a crash course in the science, how it relates to modern cloud HR solutions. In the 3 sessions after this, we'll be delving deeper into particular areas. But for today, we'll kind of treat everyone as beginners, if you like. So if you don't know anything about neuroscience or even HR, then that doesn't matter, because we're going to take the whole thing like that. So as I said, I'm gonna give a little background on our guest presenters only today. So first up is going to be Dr. Andre Vermeulen, and there's his email there if you want to contact him. Dr. Andre is something of a legend in neuroscience, and he's the founding member and CEO of Neuro-link, which he's championed for about 25 years. He's also a part-time lecturer and a member of the Exercise and Neuroscience Research Group of the University of Pretoria, where his function is to translate neuroscience into tools that people and businesses can use to drive results, some of which he has patented, hence what we're going to learn about, and some of which you will be getting for free later in this course, more later. He frequently contributes on numerous prestigious platforms like TEDx and ATD, and he hosts his own TV show called Mind Matters. So welcome, Dr. Andre Vermeulen.
Only a pleasure. Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome. And also with us today, no less of a legend, is Rhonda Stockton. She's a very experienced consultant. She specializes in talent and learning cloud solutions. She's got 2 decades of experience and has been working specifically with the SAP SuccessFactors tech since 2007, and has implemented countless instances across the world in that time, where she specializes on the customer journey and driving toward value. Rhonda was integral in developing a COVID response package for SAP when they asked us to provide a quick setup solution that covered employee well-being and business continuity. as workforces worldwide began to lock down. So that was a very interesting exercise, and she was integral to that. So thank you very much for joining us today, Rhonda.
Glad to be here. Thank you very much, Rob.
No problem at all. And so today's session, what we're going to learn today, we're going to learn about brain power skills to thrive in a VUCA world, and whatever a VUCA world is, you will learn in a second. What is neuroscience? Why it matters to drive business results? How neuro-agility addresses performance gaps? And we're going to move on to the war on talent, human error, and performance improvement, and then changing the mindset around performance and making an impact. So that's enough from me. Without further ado, I am now going to hand you over to Dr. Andre Vermeulen.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Welcome, listeners, and I believe what we have to talk about today is absolutely crucial to everyone in the world of business, everyone who's responsible for the well-being and the performance optimization of others. Now, we talk about a VUCA world, and the word VUCA represents the words volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I don't think that anyone listening to this webinar today has not firsthand experienced the impact of volatility and an uncertain world, a complex world, and everything being ambiguous. So we are living amidst constant disruptive change. And change is always when things become different, and the implication for us as human beings is that we have to adapt and modify what we do in order to still progress and still achieve the results that we are responsible for. So what is going to be essential for us is that we need to be agile, and that's why there's a lot of talk in our world about agile organizations, agile HR, leadership agility, learning agility, and so forth. And we are going to explore that concept from a neuroscience perspective a little bit more today. So the challenge, ladies and gentlemen, is that we live in a world where 80% of the jobs that will exist in the future does not exist in the moment. So that just gives us an indication of how unclear things are for us in terms of what we can expect of the future. But our challenge is what to do in a world where we're not always sure what to expect. So if we look at some research statistics, the next slide shows us that about 54% of people are discharged within 18 months after they've been hired. And that is not good for those people's careers. It is not good business whatsoever. And if we look at the reasons why, it suggests 89%. So that's almost 9 out of 10 people who get discharged within the first 18 months of entering the workplace is because of bad attitude. Now, attitude means it's the way that you habitually think. It is how you solve problems. It's about how agile your mind is, how you interact with other people, and so forth. And only 11% of the reasons why people get discharged are actually based on a lack of technical skill. And what we mean here with technical skill are the specific work-related skills that they need. So obviously, the human skills are very important. A research done among CEOs suggests that about 92% of managers say that bad hires are typically because of a lack of soft skills. Now, that exactly there, the word soft skill implies human skills. And unfortunately, the word soft skill suggests often to people it's an easy skill. Now, if it was easy, everyone would have been doing it. When we look at this slide, you will see that the gap between people entering an organization and those leading that organization, the gap in the soft skills level is 97%. In other words, that is what research now tells us, that our soft skills, those human skills that we refer to, are not that easy to acquire. It is not common sense. A skill is something that you have to learn. It's not something that you just automatically have or that is common sense. So obviously, this shows us that there is a dire need for us to develop these skills. And also to be important, to be reminded that when we look at people, we can make an analogy of an iceberg. So for instance, if a person is an engineer, their technical skill, let's say for instance, we talk about a mechanical engineer who's building a bridge, what we see are the technical skills, and very often we think that's only what people need in order to be effective and successful. But what we don't realize is that 85% of that engineer's success still depends on how effectively they use their brain. Can they be critical and creative thinkers? How do they solve problems? How do they interact with people and resolve conflict, manage and lead a team? How much confidence do they have? And those are all those human skills that's under the surface, that's not always visible, but actually the success determining factors of all people. So it is crucial that we have to look at these soft skills and say, how do we bring this into our whole bouquet of skills to make us effective, successful, employable, and competitive? And a survey that has been done amongst CEOs identified the following skills, and the percentage rated was how important they rate the following skills. And when we look at communication, it's how human beings interact. If we cannot effectively communicate, we cannot resolve conflict, we cannot solve problems, we cannot establish strong social bonds with our co-workers and so forth. But the top skills that you saw here, that you see here, are all skills that are human skills. Now, when we talk about these human skills, what is going to be important to remember in a VUCA world where we are constantly experiencing change and ambiguity and uncertainty, yes, your vocational skills and educational skills will always be important, of course. So we are not saying that that is not important. That is what we do. And then combining our educational and vocational skills with tech savviness and the technicalities to be able to do our work is very important. But human skills, also sometimes referred to as soft skills, and job experience are those skills under the surface, but that are nowadays of crucial importance. If we look at some of the top 10 companies in the world, when they bring new people on board now, yes, you have to show proof of your vocational skills. That opens the gate for you, but it does not land you a job. Then you have to show evidence of your job experience. It opens another gate, but still doesn't land you the job. And then we need to provide evidence of how we can use our experiences in new first-time changing situations. In other words, what they are looking for, the differentiating factor for really being employable is how adaptable, how agile are we? Can we adapt and adjust to new systems, new structures, new technology, fast and easy, and still access our old experiences and apply it in new first-time situations? So it's a bouquet of skills that is needed, but obviously what research shows us is that the biggest lacking factor that are equally as important are those human skills. Now, when we look at these human skills, and this has also been confirmed by organizations like the Association for Talent Development, the World Economic Forum, and other institutions that research the trends of talent development and the skills needed for the future. And more or less what you see here when you look at these 10 skills, the first 5 are brain power skills, and the last 5 can all be categorized into the framework of emotional intelligence. So just because we have a brain does not mean we have learned the skills, how to think critically, how to be creative, how to use it to solve problems. And just because we have a brain does not imply that we have cognitive flexibility. So these are essential skills that will have a massive impact on how effective, employable, and successful we are going to be in the future. So looking at these skills, if we look at the 5 brain power skills, it puts neuroscience right into the center of business as well. And when we specifically look at that space there, very important in the first place that we cannot start at a more basic point of departure than neuroscience. Now, so many times people think of neuroscience as medicine or pathology as such, but we do not realize that there is a massive that neuroscience and new brain-based research connected with psychology and education and so forth gives us complete new solutions and implications for development progress in the future. And if we really want to understand the value of neuroscience, perhaps in the first place, let's just start with the basics of what is neuroscience. And neuroscience is about looking at how the brain learns, the structures in the brain, and how your nervous system function, and how you can use that to optimize your thinking, your learning, your personality, your performance, your talent, and so forth. So neuroscience has become an interdisciplinary science, and what that means, it integrates the research from many different fields of science, like psychology and neuroscience, physiology, chemistry, education, and so forth. But anyone who uses research around the neurochemistry of how people function and see how we can help them develop improved performance, but eventually drive business results. So it has evolved as a very powerful science. Now, neuroscience as such focuses on the hard sciences. In other words, when we look at chemistry, neurophysiology, genetics, and so forth, these are the hard sciences. And why is neuroscience then important for business? Because in the first place, now that we're starting to link different sciences research, we realize that there are some performance gaps and some brain-based elements that has not been sufficiently addressed in how we assess people and how we develop people. And what it does is, in the first place, it closes the gaps on some of the elements that influences how we think, learn, and process information. But also very important, when I just started Neuro-link, very often if we talk about psychology or education or the behavioral sciences, often it was looked upon as if it's a non-exact science, and then it was never said, but people would see that as maybe of lesser importance. But when we ground our learning, our people development practices, our talent development practices, performance improvement practices into the hard sciences, like neuroscience, now it validates, it complements, and it also advances all other agility constructs. But maybe one of the most important things that we have to be cognizant of is the world has become a very small place. Business need to have global perspectives on how they identify, develop, manage talent, how they improve performance, and there cannot be a more basic place than looking at neuroscience. And the reason for that, we all have a brain, regardless of race, culture, beliefs, and everything else that may make us different. What makes us all human is the brain. And when our development practices and business practices are aligned with how the brain naturally learns and thinks. Of course, it is an inclusive approach of all people in that business. Obviously, it brings about a lot of new insights to us about how uniquely people learn. We all learn, but we learn in different ways. We think, but in different ways. We are all talented, but in different ways. It brings new insights about why human beings frequently commit errors, why some learn faster than others. And then also, it offers innovative performance optimizations to us that has frequently not been available to us. Now, still, when we look further at the value of neuroscience, what it does is it's starting to help us when we integrate education and psychology. We are starting to get a new framework for performance optimization, but it's anchored in the hard sciences. And the beauty of it, if the people development practices, what we do in talent development, performance improvement, and so forth, is scientifically based, then this approach of following a neuroscience approach complements all other human development initiatives. Perhaps one of the most important things for the world of business is there to generate wealth, to make money. And when you anchor your practices into the hard sciences, business usually get a much higher return on investment. And in webinars to follow, we will discuss some case studies to prove why we say that is the case. So it solidifies our learning practices and also significantly contributes to helping people become and be more cognitively flexible so that they can not just survive but thrive in a rapidly changing world. So the construct that people have to begin with is to optimize the factors that impact your brain and the ease and speed with which we learn and think. So the word neuro-agility, the first part of neuro, always refers to your brain and your nervous system. The word agility refers to three keywords: fast, easy, and flexible. So neuro-agility means identifying the elements that influences and can also help us optimize all the elements that impacts the ease, speed, and flexibility with which we learn, think, and process information. So this brings about a complete new framework, a holistic framework, if we want to ground our learning and human development initiatives into neuroscience, which means we have to be cognizant of drivers that impact people's brain performance and helps to make them brain fit. If we look at the market trends, there's been massive market initiatives now in terms of people wanting to improve brain fitness, although most of these initiatives has addressed only one of these components that you see there. And neuro-agility provides a holistic framework of those drivers that improves fitness, but then also the elements that improves your neurological flexibility, your flexibility to think, learn, and process information fast and easy. So the analogy I want to use is that of a ballet dancer. A ballet dancer has to practice hours a day to learn the skills to dance beautifully and be the best they possibly can. But what people seldomly realize is that they have to practice a lot to be fit and flexible, because that fit and flexible will help them to execute their skills fast and easy. And that example, that analogy is applicable to workers in the workplace also. Developing cognitive flexibility, which means improve your brain fitness, and also improving your mental flexibility, has become the point of departure in really developing a workforce that will be agile and ready for the future. So what are the differentiating factors? What makes neuro-agility different from other perspectives? And why is this webinar relevant? In the first place, it addresses performance gaps. In other words, it focuses on elements that has not sufficiently been researched and developed and optimized before, like why do some learn faster than others? How do we process information? Why do some people make more mistakes than others? But also, the power of the construct is in its holistic approach to address all the elements that influences the ease and speed with which we learn, think, and process information. Neuroscience is not just a science on its own. In fact, it interconnects with all the other sciences, and it's starting to help us validate all these behavioral sciences and anchor them into the hard sciences. It is the first time that a holistic approach is also followed in terms of optimizing people's brain performance and brain health, in layman's terms, improving people's brain fitness and brain health, but it's also integrated with those elements that influence how we think and how we learn and what makes us cognitively flexible. Constructs like brain agility has never been measured for adults before. So these are all the things that makes it different and brings a complete different result and offering to the table than ever before. And obviously, if we just look at some of the statistics, that human beings make between 6 to 8 mistakes per hour. In a year, we emit at least about 118 mistakes in the workplace that costs the business money and sometimes maybe even millions. So helping us to reduce our potential to commit error is essential. We have to remember that technology, AI, aspires to zero defect. But therefore, we have to have human beings who control that AI and technology that also reduces their risk for human error. So essential that these components have to be addressed. So in my opinion, to conclude my session, and before I give over to my colleague Rhonda, I want to just conclude my part of the session today by simply saying that knowing your neurological design, understanding your brain-based blueprint for how you think, how you learn, and how you process information, and also understanding which drivers impact your design is the key to potential development and performance improvement. But my colleague Rhonda is now going to take this a little bit further more into the practicalities of how neuroscience is a good fit for business. So thank you so far for listening to me, and enjoy Rhonda's contribution.
Thank you very much. You know, Andre, just thinking about the impact this can have on the entire human capital management experience is mind-blowing. I've been working with HR technologies for a few years, and I'm going to discuss some practical examples with you in our everyday lives. Can you imagine doing an assessment where you apply to a website for a job and let the AI determine what your preferred job would be and what the possible development toward those jobs would be? This does not seem very space age anymore, does it? Just consider two major impacts. Considering the first impact at an individual level, understanding when a person is ready for development. The second impact, possibly at an organizational level, which enables full clarity for workforce development, making goals more specific, and enabling better and more effective interventions, focusing on achievements and performance development. As Professor Andre rightly said, the lack of soft skills results in 92% of bad hires. Understanding where a person's affinity lies and how ready they are themselves for change could support not only recruiting decisions, but also succession nominations, career planning for future development, as well as support the development goals that are attainable and relevant. I very often deal with corporate organizations where many restrictions are placed on employees' profiles simply because internal headhunting is a very real issue. In some instances, it is not only important to be the best company, but also the best department to work for. A succession strategy could be put in place for a culture whereby internal staff movements cannot disrupt environments, as these movements are planned up front. With SuccessFactors recruiting, you can store up to 1 million talent records, which can be accessed during talent reviews to combine the internal and external talent acquisition process from a single screen. Detailed talent searches allow for searches against all user profile data, the accomplishments, competency achievements, histories like learning histories, performance histories, and more. This gives you all the information that you'll need from an HR profile perspective. Joined with the results from a brain fitness assessment, you should be able to assess if a person would be a right fit for a job, if they are ready for the role, and change what the real actions are that should be taken to fast-track their development. Objectivity is always an issue as people rate performance reviews differently. Also consider that not everyone in a team was hired to be the top specialist in the team, so you cannot anticipate that everyone should be rated against the same standards. So how does one normalize across the performance result expectations? With the SuccessFactors job profiles, we always recommend to add the expected ratings against the job competencies to ensure that the raters are all aware of the expected performance delivery for that job. The calibration processes enable you to review the rating assignments on a more global scale. Some customers include their entire workforce in the calibration process, but yes, that's right, employees as well, with really good results. For example, Jane realized she didn't perform as well as Susan and therefore cannot be in the same performance rating bracket. This is just one way in which these companies ensure transparency in their decision-making processes, and they got complete buy-in from everyone. Getting and requesting feedback is also crucial to ensure that all aspects impacting a performance review are readily available. SuccessFactors provides various areas where feedback can be requested. What is really great about it is that the feedback is all collated as supporting documents with notes and attachments available throughout your entire review process. Getting feedback from various sources throughout the continuous performance cycle provides more information that will support decision-making between a number of perfect candidates. Make sure that your profile has the right data to support any talent decisions made and give good and constructive feedback in return. Rob, this makes me think about that interesting example you had from the British government regarding the exam results in the schools this year.
Yes, indeed. For everyone else's benefit, when we were chatting earlier in the rehearsal, this idea of calibrating and not respecting the individual and sort of doing it across the board reminded me of the UK government this year. So because of COVID, the teachers were asked to assess individual pupil results because they couldn't sit their exams. So they then presumed an uptick of 15% due to natural favourable bias, as they called it. So they figured the teachers are going to bump them up a little bit. So they then implemented a reduction across the entire board, across every single pupil, using an algorithm from the previous year's results to try and calibrate for this. So of course, in some cases, very bad results were given because of so if somebody did well in a poor school, their results were incredibly unfavorable towards them. It didn't respect the individual. And there was a huge uproar. They had to do a massive U-turn. So yeah, it's interesting. I think the UK government should probably come on a course like this to help them understand that kind of thing. Anyway, it was just an interesting note.
Thank you very much for that, Rob. Development processes for any reason has mostly been seen as a negative process to all employees. How often have you been in a meeting where your boss presents and you didn't speak up because he or she was there? How much more difficult is it then to admit that you need development? We are noticing a global change in HR key performance indicators to change the mindset of development into a global understanding of developing towards the same goals and strategy. Small tweaks in terminology and constantly considering the end user experience can drive culture change. For example, changing a label such as development goal to my initiative could personalize the goal even more and make a natural connection to the corporate initiative to which these goals can be linked. What does it mean to create a culture of continuous performance? Continuous performance enables your organization to create a trusted environment in which employees feel empowered to take control of their own development. In a culture of true continuous performance management, employees support each other with a wide range of real-time performance feedback. Changing the mindset from you need development to do your job better to I want to develop myself to improve my performance changes the mindset from a punitive and compensation-driven performance process to one of participation and inclusion fostered by continuous performance culture. The purpose of performance management is to improve employee engagement via meaningful conversations. More engaged employees are more productive and therefore profitability increases. The purpose of HR is to ensure that there are actions and activities readily available to employees during the self-discovery process and ensuring that everyone remains on track and aligned to the strategy. A culture can only be changed by making small tweaks to a system apologies, let me just go back there again. A culture can be changed by making small tweaks to a system, such as changing the name of something. For example, creating human-friendly labels. I prefer to know I'm a legendary performer rather than just a 4.9 average. Empowering employees more and giving them the tools to understand themselves and making decisions about how they want to fit into the value chain are some very attainable impacts at an organizational level. At an individual level, it is important to communicate and make use of change management to ensure employees understand how important their profiles are and how their data is being utilized to improve business decisions. They are, after all, the heartbeat of the organization. We will also be discussing the profiles more in the following webinars.
Okay. Thank you, Rhonda. You're done?
Thank you very much. Thanks, Rob. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you to both of you. So that's pretty good timing. So we obviously trained you well. We've got 20 minutes left to sort of dissect some of the stuff that you've just been saying. I think we've got some questions coming in, so I'll come to Neldi in a minute. I would just like to ask a question actually that struck me a lot when you've been talking about the culture change and people accepting it and not being punitive. I think that's really interesting. I mean, rightly or wrongly, people joke about neuroscience, right? About getting into my head, getting into my brain. There's a recent headline. I follow Elon Musk quite a lot because I think he's an interesting person. He actually has a company called Neuro-link. So obviously it was already taken, Neuro-link, and he has plans for brain reading threads and putting chips into pigs' brains and all sorts of weird things. Now, people are going to be naturally wary of this, right? I presume. Tell me if I'm wrong. How do you overcome such obstacles? Indeed, is there a resistance to embracing this neuroscience? And I guess I'm asking, is there any sort of underlying moral issue here at all? Would you like to, Andre, perhaps I can ask you first on that one. And Tian, if you want to join in, feel free.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I think people's fear is that, you know, when it's an invasive process, they feel that they give control away about who they are. And that's why there's some fears around this at the moment. But what we've been talking about today and the profiles that Rhonda referred to, which all our participants will get an experience of get closer to the end of this webinar, is a non-invasive process, So the bottom line is, when we talk about neuroscience, we're just using it to optimize people's performance, but we are not talking about an invasive process of something that is put in your brain. And also what we're talking about here, and you mentioned that also, Rob, is respecting the privacy of the individual. So when we talk about neuroscience assessment, we are not here referring to invasive processes. What we are talking about is non-invasive processes, just looking at the factors that influences how easy, fast people process information and how flexible they are. And the whole purpose of what we're talking about is to help people become better versions of themselves. But at all times, they will always have control over themselves. There's no personal information that they would not want to disclose with anyone that will be revealed. That is not going to happen here. So we're looking purely at this from a development perspective, from a non-invasive perspective, and also to help people understand their potential and optimize that potential. So it's a completely, what we are talking about here today is a completely different approach towards development and helping people cope and with the disruptive change and be better versions of themselves than what the Neuro-link and Elon Musk's concept is all about. It's completely different worlds.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Rhonda, do you have a thought on that?
I think from an HR perspective, one of the big things to consider is the data privacy laws. So we do make use of the various laws globally, you know, in order to make sure that employees are constantly in control of their own data and can also decide how that is utilized. So all checks are in place and ready to go on the system side as well.
Right, right. Do you think that do you come across this natural fear of neuroscience? Is it just the word itself that maybe scares people off? And do HR managers understand this, the difference?
I think from an HR perspective, definitely. I think the mindset around who is creating the development plan and who is telling someone to do the assessment, you know, the approach in that could be different, where the employee and manager themselves could be seen as owning that and deciding when and how to utilize it, rather than it being forced on them from a top-down perspective. That could just have a difference in the mindset and the approach towards from the punitive to the non-punitive setting.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Tian, did you want to add anything there? Or has it been covered?
I was just thinking in terms of if we look at what Elon Musk is doing, there's no issue with moving forward. I do believe that people do get scared of the word sometimes, or neuroscience, because as you mentioned, that they would have sort of this idea of people looking into my brain and sort of trying to understand how or maybe it would disqualify me in some way. And that's definitely not what our focus is on. As Andre mentioned, it's much more of a development focus for that specific person. And it's not there to disqualify, it's there to build and create more hope for the individual to reaching the potential, and also discoveries, discovering things that about themselves, how they process information, to manage themselves. So I think morally, I think that's the question regarding morals. That's a whole another discussion on its own, and also the ethical procedures and things that one needs to go through. But yeah, from our side, our focus is on that person and helping that person become more of who they can be and who they know they can be, and developing that potential for the company actually to also gain sort of a return on investment.
Indeed. Excellent. Okay. So Naldi, let's go to you. Do we have any questions? I can see a few on my screen. So
yes. So let's quickly just clear something. If you've got a question or if you raised your hand, please type your questions for us in the question box so that we can raise this. So we've got a first question from Portia. Portia is asking, will you be making this recording available afterwards? Rob?
Oh, yes, yes, we will. So everyone who registered for the event will be emailed this session in video form. So this whole thing. It'll also be on our landing page as we go along. So the place where you registered. So yes, anyone who's missed this, if you've got any colleagues that you think, oh, blimey, this would be really interesting for them, then just email them or tell them to go onto the landing page, and the recordings for each session will appear on there as soon as we've uploaded them. So I think you'll get emailed 2 days, I think. Super.
And also remember, this is a series. So if you've missed one part of the series, you can always go and look for it in the database that was sent. Another question from Tabo. Can neuroscience be fooled? Andre, can you answer that for us?
Can neuroscience be fooled, did you say? I see,
yes,
right.
Can neuroscience be
good
fooled?
question. Good question. I like it. Okay.
Yeah, I think, you know, I don't think science can be fooled. Having said so, what we are discovering now about the brain is this is one of the most exciting sciences ever to be involved in, because the brain is the most researched phenomena in the universe at the moment. But I think why, for instance, let me give you an example. There's been some myths around, like you've heard them, we only use 10% of the brain. Now that's complete hogwash. It's not true whatsoever. Or the idea that there's two brains in one head. We've got one brain with two hemispheres, but it's not two brains. It's two halves that complement each other. So the more we do research, the more accurate we are becoming. And so there may be some myths due to lack of understanding or lack of research in years gone by. But that's why this is so powerful now, that because we are really having this big scientific focus and anchoring it into the hard sciences, it is helping us to separate fact from fiction. And that is why the science cannot really be fooled, because science is about providing evidence for the statements that you are making. And I think what we do have to be cognizant of is also that the brain is so complex. There's so little, we're learning so much, but still for hundreds, thousands of years, we will be researching this because it's the most complex phenomena in the universe as well. So there's a lot that we don't know about the brain, and that's why myths around the brain occur. But science, as we know it now, that focuses on evidence-based research, that cannot be fooled.
Excellent. I guess the questioner was asking it in case they can try and get themselves promoted, right? Rhonda, can anyone fool you?
Well, most of our final evaluations and so on are objective-based. So this is why the feedback and as much information or data to substantiate objectivity is needed. So hopefully there is enough data during the calibration sessions that it will not be as objective as before.
Yeah, I think it comes.
Yeah, perhaps, Rob, I would just like to add here also that so many times, what does happen is when people, for instance, do an assessment, but they have not been accurate or honest in the assessment, then they would say, but the assessment is not accurate, whereas it's actually the responses and the intention of the person when completing these types of questionnaires that sort of makes it inaccurate. But as Rhonda said, that the tools we use in business are validated, they are objective, they are science-based, and if people just give brutally honest responses and fill in the questionnaires the way that they're supposed to, then definitely, it will give you the accurate information on which you can make some objective decisions.
Yeah, I'm guessing it kind of comes back to that fear thing, right? I remember when I was younger, the HR department introduced psychometric testing for the first time, and there was sort of a ripple of, oh my God, went around the company. And I guess that's just something that, like Tian mentioned, it's your job you
know what, Rob, just what you said right there, that word testing. The moment you hear the word test, it implies that you can fail something.
Yes.
And no one wants to fail. And that is why people feel threatened often by assessments. But if we just do assessments, not testing people, there's no negative outcome, but literally just assessing an issue and seeing what are the development implications of this and how can we help you, then there's nothing to fear. So the point is simply, let's say we talk about neuro design, which we'll still talk a lot about in webinars to come. You cannot fail your own design. You can only discover it and optimize it, but there's nothing to fail. And this is what the process is all about. It's constructive, it's respecting the human being, it's there to empower and to build.
Absolutely. Okay, Nell, anything else?
Thanks. So I've got a question from Muhammad. Is neuroscience recognized by a wider HR community? For Andre, please.
Good one.
Well, you know, I think, is it science by the HR community that is informed about the value of neuroscience? Of course, it is. There is no question about it, because the people in HR community are all trained in the human and the behavioral leadership sciences and so forth. So there should be no question about it. I think one of the challenges that we do face is that sometimes still people are not accurately aware about the value of neuroscience for HR. And that's then, you know, you cannot manage what you don't understand. You can also not judge what you don't understand. But for those who have a strong grounding and understanding of the value of neuroscience, there's absolutely just no question about it.
Rhonda?
Thank you.
Rhonda, did you want to say anything on that?
No, that covered everything. Thank you, Andre.
Okay. Tian, do you have a view on that?
I think that covered everything. Thanks, Rob.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, that the more that things like this go on, and the more I kind of learn about it, the more I see, especially those stats that you threw up at the beginning about how many people leave their jobs and they're not happy and they're not comfortable. I mean, I know we've talked a lot about this this fear of it, but from my understanding, it sounds like it helps you fit square pegs into square holes, right? So yeah.
You know what, Rob? People fear often what they don't understand. The more they get to know it, understand it, and understand its value to you as a human being, there's 100% nothing to fear. So it's just about becoming aware, informed, and see how you can use that for your own advancement.
Yeah, and I guess from a HR manager's perspective, if you're up on this sort of stuff, then you're pretty up on the cutting edge, aren't you? So it should be something you should be accepting. Nelda, yes, thanks. Any more questions?
How much time do we still have? Okay, I've still
time for one more question.
Okay, one more question. I've got a question here from Leanne. Would one ever sideline or not promote an employee because of neuro-agility profile? Andre?
100%, absolutely not. The purpose of neuro-agility is not about, it's just a construct that helps people become to be more agile and to utilize all the thinking and learning modalities of the brain. So if anything, the construct of neuro-agility is not about putting people in a box, it's actually helping them to take them outside of the box and become a better version of themselves. If I can use a simple analogy, they say that it takes a horse between one horse can pull between 2 to 3 tons of weight, but 2 horses can pull between 7 to 8 tons of weight. So there's a multiplication factor when the horses collaborate and synergize. And I'm using this analogy that the more we start utilizing all different brain regions and we learn and we practice to utilize all different brain regions simultaneously, the bigger the multiplication factor is all about. And that's what neuro-agility is actually all about. So very definitely, you can become and will be able to utilize all areas of the brain. To give you just a simple example, you have two hemispheres. Each one weighs about, depending on male, female, and so forth, roughly 700 to 750 grams. And we utilize both, but we do sometimes have natural default modes. But when we learn to utilize both equally, simultaneously, you become the best version of yourself. And that means you will be able to deal in whatever situation you find yourself to be critical and creative if you have that cognitive flexibility. And that is why this is such a powerful construct. It will never disqualify you, but it will also just show you in which areas you can develop yourself further in order to be the best version of yourself.
Okay. Very passionate response there, Andrew. I could tell that got you going. We literally have 30 seconds before I need to move on. Rhonda, do you want to add anything? Final comments?
All good from my side. Thank you for an excellent journey to have this session with you, Dr. Andre.
Thank you, Rhonda, for your informed presentation. Love working with like-minded professionals like you, who makes the world work better.
And myself.
Thank you so much.
And Rob and the rest of the team. Thank you, Rob.
Okay, so just to wrap up, a couple of minutes left before the hour. So following this session, you will get, as I mentioned earlier, you will get the video emailed to you. I think in 2 days' time that comes once it's been edited. Slides will be put up on the landing page as well, so you can download these slides. In the meantime, if you want to do a free brain fitness test, there is the link for you. I'll leave that up for a few seconds if you want to take a camera shot of it or whatever. And also, you can download a free neuro-agility infographic. So if you want to start discussing this amongst your peers and colleagues, there's something useful for you there. Now, next session, session 2 takes place on the 27th of October. So that's 3 weeks from today. It'll be at the same time. Now, that is about neuro-agility, the construct to future-proof your career. So we heard a bit about that. So we're going to delve deeper into that, so that will be interesting. And then we've got 2 other sessions after that, so they're each 3 weeks apart, so you can put them in your diaries and get used to it. So session 3, the neuroscience's role in creating a robust workforce, and then using neuroscience to find and nurture the best talent. So again, we may be hearing from Tian, certainly Rhonda will be on those from the HR side, and Andre again. You can register for all of these sessions here at the landing page where you went before. As I mentioned, everything will be put up on those landing pages, so previous slides, everything else as we go along. So again, if you want to encourage your colleagues to go and find out about this, then just point them to that landing page there, punch.iXerv.com/neuroscience, and everything will be on there. So even after the whole event, at Christmas time, if you can sit down over a mince pie and look through the whole thing if you want to. And I think at the very end of this, there's talk of having a certificate as well, so you can wave that around. So thank you very much for joining us. If we haven't covered your question, I know there was quite a few questions. we will collect it. If you think of another one, feel free to email it to us on info@iXerv.com. Yeah, that's all from me. Thank you very much to the team. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you found it interesting, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event. Thank you very much.